Welcome, Katon, to Metalaton Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Hirax, this new album Faster Than Death, and more things related to the Metal War in general. So we start then by asking, how are you doing today? How's the band on the last couple of years? Because El Rostro de la Muerte, it was released more than 10 years ago.
Yeah. We've been busy, believe it or not. I mean, obviously the record output should be more, but we usually tour a lot. So that's what's been mainly going on, a lot of touring. Last year we did a big tour of Europe, and now we're back with the new album, Faster Than Death, which even though it's been a long wait, it's been worth it. I mean, we've already been receiving great reviews of the record, and it came out last week, the 21st in Europe and Japan, and this week, actually tomorrow, I believe it's Friday. Yeah, it comes out February 28th in North America, and then it'll be released in Europe. I mean, I should say South America, starting in Brazil, probably in the next month or so. So getting the record sent out all over the world is great, and now we're starting to prepare for touring.
Amazing, amazing. So, and this one, well, I saw that but that's the one thing that captured my attention from your discography since the beginning. It was that your fourth album, El Rostro de la Muerte, was released in with the Spanish word. So, why did you decide to release this album, El Rostro de la Muerte, with the Spanish name? And because the other ones, until now, and Faster Than That, all albums the names in English.
Yeah, well, Spanish is important to us, even though I don't, it's not my first language. I'm still learning it, but it's an awesome language. And, we've toured a lot of Spanish speaking countries. So that record was really a dedication to all those different countries that we've toured to, whether it's like Mexico or if we go to South America, and we've done pretty much every country in South America. And then going back to Europe, Spain is really a great area for us. We tour there. We usually do at least four concerts there when we tour through Spain. So, we wanted to do something special for those fans, and it really was received well, which was great. We love our Spanish speaking fans, and we wanted them to know that. A lot of bands just, if they speak one language, that's all they do, and we didn't want to be that way. We want to be able to at least incorporate a little bit of Espanol into our music. It's important, and even being in Los Angeles, is where we're based out of, there's a lot of different Spanish speaking cultures, so it's important for us to represent that.
Mhm. Okay, okay. Now, well, tomorrow will be the release day for Faster Than That, or February 28th will be the day of release of Faster Than That. And now, the last couple weeks, you can see the new reviews, opinions from the people, and etc. etc. So, how do you take the review, the bad, good reviews, and all this can overwhelming well receive for this new album?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, obviously, even though I've been doing this for over 40 years now, you still care, the reviews still matter to you, the good ones and the bad ones. And I think, but what's also good to think about, when you get a bad review, you should look at it and either learn from it or also realize that the person that reviewed the record doesn't understand your music or the style. Like if you're a newer metal fan and you like, modern metal, you might not like this record. But if you're old school and you grew up on thrash metal from the 80s till now, you'll probably love the record. So you have to keep that in mind. And it's okay that people don't like it. Like that's one thing about Hyrax. We do what we like. We don't really worry about that kind of stuff. Like we know we're an underground band. Luckily we've been able to get more popular over the years. I mean, from the 80s till now, the band has continually grown, our
Mhm.
fan base. But you have to be able to take it, because this is metal. It's, people have their right to their opinion. But overall, the response and the reviews have been amazing. So that's what's I feel really good about that. I feel that we made the record that we wanted to make. There's no compromise. We didn't try to make a commercial record at all.
Mm.
It's totally old school, but that's what we are. Like people that do review the record, they need to take into consideration we are from the 80s. That's the stuff we love. But there's going to be a little bit of modern on it because technology's changed. It's not that we don't record the same way we did back in the 80s, even though we still do a lot of it live. There's a lot more tricks and stuff in the studio now than we had back in the 80s. You have computers, which is it's 1,000 times different because of computers. Like back in the day, we did everything hardcore, like old school recording, tape, machines, not as many overdubs because, back then a lot of this stuff hadn't been developed. So there's a little bit more modern than it, would be because it's not the 80s anymore, but the music represents that time frame very well.
Okay, okay, that's interesting to know. And one thing that captured my attention was the last thing that you said. Well, I'm coming from, as you, I'm 45 years old, so I'm coming from the 80s. I remember
Yeah,
very well because I was there. I was a
yeah,
child at that moment in the 80s, but I
yeah.
was there listening the first album from Iron Maiden, etc., etc. But now, right now, as you can see, and you told something to me about this. Now the digital era is very strong in all releases, and with these all releases, you can see the standardization of the sound, especially into the extreme music or in general in the metal industry, are right now are great. So great musicians, great bands, great records, no bad records. But I remember when you are in the 80s or 90s, when 10 or 15 records were released at that moment, 15 records, six are great. The other one, not great. That's completely normal because that is the production, the money, etc., etc. So we understand that. So, but now, what's your opinion about now that we have more than 50 records per week and per weekend, and we don't have any bad record? We all great, sounds great, all music great, great album, great, etc., etc. So, do you feel some kind of nostalgia when you remember the 80s, when you find some records special, but now there are 50 records for a lot of people special. So what's your point of view about this?
Yeah, I think that, I'm lucky that I was back in the 80s and got to see that and hear that, even the demo tapes and the tape trading where we would share tapes from different bands from different worlds. I mean, think about it. Back in the 80s, it was like a dinosaur. We had cassette tapes, which a lot of kids nowadays don't even know what a cassette tape is, or they might just be getting into them. So the technology's changed, the talent's gotten good too, though. And I think also the thing is back in the 80s, this was brand new, so a lot of people didn't even understand this kind of music or hadn't even heard it yet. So that's why now, 40 years later, there's a lot more bands, there's a lot more music out there for them to learn from and listen to. They can go back to the 80s records just by a click of the button by getting on the computer, and you have all these different streaming websites where you can, if you hear of a band, an old school band, you can go listen to them really quick. And I think that's the important thing about these records now. You also, I mean, there's great records, but you have to make really great records because people have so many to listen to. They have so many bands to choose from. And if they're like me back when I was younger, you don't have that much money. So you got to decide very carefully which records you buy. Um, for us, it's also keeping the attention span. Like if you notice with the new record, we made sure we shaved off a lot of fat. And what I mean by that is not so many filler tracks. Like a lot of bands will throw on extra songs just for the hell of it because they feel that they got to fill up space. For us, it's more important to have really good songs so people remember the songs. So I mean, you just got to be very careful what you do, but be smart about it. And the bands nowadays, they have the technology too, so it's easier to record even in your house. You can record in your bedroom, and there's a lot of different tools to make drums sound really good, to make guitars sound really good. So they have more technology than we had in the 80s, but we still had so many great bands that actually paved the way that now even these bands got to look back and say, hey, I wouldn't be playing this style if it wasn't for bands like Venom, or Motorhead, or even our crossover bands like us and different bands like DRI or, SOD, so many different bands that help pave the way. But like I said, because of technology and because of computers, kids can find that music way easier than we could. We had to, mail order and, wait. We had to wait 2 weeks for a package to show up. Nowadays, Amazon and all that stuff, you get it either overnight or a couple of days later.
Oh yeah, that is right. That is right. And other thing that you said it's about the bands from the 80s, because you are product of the sound of the 80s. That thrash metal is a product of the sound of the 80s. And I remember what I spoke with Tom Angel Reaper from Sodom like 2 years ago, and she told me, or he told me the same thing. The thrash metal is the product of the 80s. Now the new bands are good, are better players. That's completely normal, but that they don't have the essence of the 80s because the thrash metal has an experience, economic, society, etc., in all countries, Germany, Brazil, US, etc., etc. So now, what do you think about now the retro movement that exists for the thrash metal with the old sound? Do you think that some thrash new metal bands will carry the torch for the future generations? Because until we know, just the old band is still carrying the torch for the thrash metal.
Yeah, I think if they have a long career like we have, I mean, the thing is, some of those bands are, I mean, even though this is kind of still old, some of these bands are only 10 years, 15 years old, but if you're around 25, 35, or 40 plus like we have been, then that shows longevity. If they can last that long, then they will be the next bearers of the torch. They will carry the torch on and keep spreading the music. But the good thing for any of the old school bands is now that there's a records of it, people can find those records and go back. And so those bands are going to live on forever. Even the bands that may not be still around, will still their music will carry on through the new generations of thrash metal kids because there's new ones every show we play. There's younger audiences as well as the old audiences. A lot of the old schoolers still come out to the concert, so they're mixed in there with the young kids as well. But yeah, the young bands will carry on the torch. It just matters how long they last if they keep putting out good records. The thing is, you really have to work hard to put out good records. It just doesn't happen. Like you gotta write good songs. You gotta get the songs recorded well. Like for us, it's great because we have access to great producers. Like the new record has Max Norman on it, and we were really fortunate to get Max Norman. After growing up on his music because he produced a lot of the records we grew up on, like the first two Ozzy Osbourne records, Loudness, Y&T. I mean, many, many more bands. Megadeth. I mean, our producer has worked with a lot of great bands. So getting him, he understood our sound, and that's why the record sounds the way it sounds.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Other thing that I remember all the time, the trash, because when we review a new band from thrash metal, it's impossible not to mention the old bands. So, and when you hear a new band, a new band, review a new band, you feel the sensation from Overkill, Hirax, Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, etc., etc., etc. So at that moment, it was great thrash metal because you hear 10 bands, and the 10 bands amazingly sounds different at that moment. Now
Yeah,
you have 100 bands, and these 100 bands in the thrash metal sounds like the 10 bands that you hear 40 years ago. That's
yeah.
no. And for a lot of people, included me, so we think the thrash metal is stagnated with the sound of the 80s, with the great records and the great bands. And not just the new bands now are replying or are replying the same sound that we hear in the 80s.
Yeah.
So do you think that thrash metal right now in the sound and the riffs and the production is stagnated? This is beyond of a good production, beyond a great record.
That's a great question. I think, you probably said it yourself. It's like, yeah, they do sound a lot like the old bands. And they should, like, even for us, what was great back when we were coming up is that we tried to sound different than the other band. Like, we didn't want to sound like we came from an area where there was Slayer, Savage Grace, Armored Saint, Hyrax, Agent Steel, Evil Dead, many, many bands. Dark Angel was our brother band, but we didn't sound anything like each other. Us and Dark Angel are two different things. So that was on purpose though, because we had so much pride that we didn't want to sound like each other. And me and Gene Hoglan have been friends since he was really young, like probably 15 years old, 16 years old. So there was a competitive thing with us, but I think what it is, a lot of the younger bands, they're really influenced by all that early thrash metal stuff. But I think if they really, maybe if they go longer, maybe they'll get more creative. It's really a thing of creativeness, like trying to do your own sound. Yeah, obviously you have roots. I mean, even we have roots. We grew up on Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Thin Lizzy, all these different bands. But you have to get your own style And so some of them definitely need to work on that. Because I'll be honest with you, when I hear a lot of the new bands, I totally know what they're doing and where they're coming from and their influences. You know, you can hear bits of Sodom, you can hear bits of Creator, you can hear bits of Hirax or Dark Angel or Nasty Savage, even some of the older bands that were like a mix. You know, so uh, luckily we were pretty creative and we had our own sound, and I think hopefully those bands will get theirs as they mature as a band, because some of them are still very young, and playing fast is a great thing, but you also, like I said, you have to develop your own style.
Okay, okay. So, well, returning to this new album for Faster Than That, when do you use this for you? When is time? You mentioned me that you were waiting for the aspect to all be creative, all be ready to release a new album. Faster Than That is the for you. This year is the year to release this Faster Than That. And when do you decide to start writing songs for this new album? It was perhaps one of these songs are rescue for the previous album, Immortal Legacy, or no, who knows? In general, so for this, when do you decide to start writing songs for this Faster Than That, and why do you decide to release this 2025 or five? Sorry.
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, the record should have been released even a year earlier, but we had some technical problems with, we had a different producer when we first started the project. We had Bill Matoyer, who I've worked with for many years. Great producer, but time-wise, it got to where we needed to get the record done because it was already running late. So then we made the switch to Max Norman, which was a very smart move because Max was very efficient and really professional and got everything done. So the record should have been about a year earlier, but it worked out great because this is our 40th year since our first album, Raging Violence. So kind of to celebrate Raging Violence and also have a new record come out at the same time is awesome because we're still going strong. The band's still putting out music, but we're also proud of our past records. The first two records set the table, Raging Violence in 1985, and then in 1986 we had Hate, Fear, and Power. So to have the new record come out at that time is awesome. And it was a lot of work. This record was probably, even though it's time-wise, it's probably a little bit longer than Hate, Fear, and Power. But
Mm.
we put a lot of time into it because, we wanted to get the songs right. We wanted to make some songs that were thrash metal anthems in our own right. Like for us, when you listen to a song like the opening track, which is called Drill Into the Brain, or even the video song that we had come out recently, the first real single, which is called Relentless, those songs are going to stick with people, and we're really proud of that. So it may have taken a little bit of time, but it worked out just right. Like now the record's coming out and we're getting ready to go out on tour. We'll start touring in March, so yeah, the timing's great, and sometimes that's the way it works in this business, especially with metal bands and thrash metal. Like you've got to put out the records at the right time, and the press has been really great to this record. So which I wasn't really worried about or thinking about. We made the record for ourselves. We weren't thinking about radio play, which we right away it got picked up by different stations, even in Brazil. Andreas Kieser from Sepultura has a radio show in Brazil, and he's been playing the new Hirax record. So when I hear about the record even being played on the radio, I'm can't believe it because that's not why we made the record. We made it for the thrash metal fans, for the underground.
Oh, okay, okay. Now that's nice. That's nice. And other question related with the fans and with your discography, because when I read reviews about the Hyrax, the new albums, all the time the reviewers compare all the time the first two great albums from Hyrax are great records, so not comparable to things, etc. The fans usually thinks different, like the from the musician. That's completely different. So because for the fans, the last album is not the best, but the first two albums are the best, and that's a curious thing because at that moment you didn't have more money, you didn't play well because you were starting a band. That's completely normal. You tried to be creative at that moment with all the resources that you have at that moment, and then when you get better, get better, the fans don't like when you play better. So the fans like when you play not better. That's a
Yeah,
curious thing. So
floppier.
and what's your opinion about now this common thing that the fans think that the jazz the two albums, the first two albums from Hirax are the best works today, and the last ones are not so great, but they played much better.
Yeah, I think it's okay though. I mean, I do understand because I'm the same way. So
Mhm.
like if you're the same way, you've got to respect other people's opinion. And the fans
Mhm.
are awesome. You know, they stick with you even through the records that maybe they don't think are that as
Mhm.
great as the first two. But you know, also then sometimes there are people that hear the newer records and like them even better too. So it's that's what's good about a band like us. Like some bands stop releasing new records because they figure screw it. The first two records are good enough, and a lot of them just tour off of the old records. They don't even try to put out new records, but we do, and it's great because you know there's still a fan base buying the new records as well as they go back and buy the old records. If they're not familiar with our first two albums, they usually end up going back and getting them after they buy the new record. So it's kind of important to keep putting out new records so people will go back and say, hey, I need, if they like these records, they're going to be like, hey, I need the whole collection, you know, and that because that's the way I am with if I like a band a lot, like especially early Iron Maiden, I have all the early Iron Maiden records and singles and all that kind of stuff. Or
Mhm.
even if it's a band like Judas Priest, they're still pretty great, especially for where they're at in their career and their age. Like when you think about it, how old they're older than me. So for
Mhm.
Judas Priest to still be putting out pretty good records is awesome. But at the same time, a fan like me would go back and buy the earlier records for sure, you know. So it's kind of a it's a tough it's a tough job because you've got fans that are hardcore and they are man they're way hardcore. So if they like the first two records, you can't really change their mind, and that's okay. I mean, to me, it's I'm really honored that people love the first two albums, especially to this day. Like when you think about those records, they're 40 years old, 39 years old.
Mhm.
Even to be remembered, if you're remembered 40 years later, then you've done something right, you know?
Yeah, that is right, and that is right. And other things related with the fans is about the the artificial intelligence. As you can see, the maths is more like the get mad with this inform with the artificial intelligence, especially into music, because when some band, especially DSI, Kerry King, and other bands into the in the metal industry, they they use it. They used in artificial intelligence for the cover art, pestilence like that. So and the fans with the fans is totally okay. We like it because we can use the artificial intelligence on our favor. The band's
Yeah.
completely normal, but the fans think differently. When the fans see the situation with artificial intelligence, gets mad automatically. Why that band use artificial intelligence is not true. It's not etc etc. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but the fans just getting mad for the option that they can see or they can hear. But the artificial intelligence or the cover arts edited, it was since the 90s. You can see the mashup from the old bands like Pay No More, Pantera. There's a digital cover arts, not 80s band, 8 cover arts, but just the people are getting mad for use this technology because they know now they are technology to
Yeah.
use this one. And other
Yeah.
thing related to this is as you can so what's your opinion first of all about this artificial intelligence now?
I mean, I know it's coming. It's already here, and
Mhm.
people are going to use it. I don't really like it for me, but that's just my personal take on it. I still want to make the album covers, you know, art. I still want there to be artists because I think also an artist is the same as a musician or is the same as a guy that has a regular job. I mean, we all want, you know, choose a job that we want to do, whether it's in media, you know, helping promote music or talking about bands. So back to the art, AI, if that's going to be used, some bands will use it. Like if you look at the new Kerry King record, that's pretty much you, AI or whatever that is. You know, whatever artificial artist they got to do that. You know, that's fine. That's if that's what he wanted. But for me, I still prefer artist drawings, you know, creating a painting or a picture out of art and drawing it. You know, I want a human. I like the human touch. And even with our music, we won't have any of that stuff because we're still going to do all the music real with real vocals, real guitars, you know. I know that, like I said, that's going to be used. So people shouldn't be surprised, but they do have a right to their opinion. If they don't like it, that's fine. If they do like it, that's fine. But myself, I like stuff. This word gets used a lot by guys like me, but I still like it the old school way.
Okay, okay, that is true. And other things related with this is just you can see a lot of people. are a lot of people are getting mad for the artificial intelligence, but for the new musicians play live, now the new musicians are not playing with amps, not playing with this. So just you need to play with directly with the console there, directly with the connections. You have the app. You don't mostly now all musicians don't didn't no now musicians don't use the no musicians don't use the effects like the in the 80s or 90s. They are using plugins now laptops and these kind of things. Yes, the effects, the amps is not longer available. So now the people just mad for the result of the music. But now the digital, the kind of effects are live. All bands are using this kind of technology since 10 years now. So what's your
Yeah,
opinion about just this? Because a lot of people think that the artificial intelligence will take jobs
yeah.
for the artists. But
It
now
probably,
with the amps, without effects, there's no technician musicians in the live presentations. So just the
yeah.
band and one.
Yeah, it will take jobs, but for people like me, I'll still provide jobs because I still want the old school stuff. I want amps, even on stage, prefer amps. I mean, who knows? I might get to where it's just no way for me to do that because, like, when you tour, especially when you do festivals, if the promoter decides that they want plugins instead of, live amps, then what can you do? But I would always prefer amps. Like even in the studio, we still use real amps. We still use amp heads, amp cabinets, and we mic them up because we prefer that guitar sound. I think, like I said, back to the people that are more into futuristic stuff or where the way music's gonna go with AI and more computer stuff, they're probably gonna look at records like ours and maybe not even understand it. Which is okay because that's a different generation. But I still think people are going to look for records like ours because they want that real stuff. They want to know what it did sound like, what real amps sound like, what real drums sound like. We use real drums, we use real bass. I do vocals without any auto tuning. There's none of that shit. We do it
Mm,
real, you know,
mm,
and
okay.
we're proud of it. Very
Mm,
proud of it.
right, right. Well, we are close to this interview, Katon. And for this, what kind of plans do you have for this Hirax, for Faster Than That? Perhaps you will embark in tours here in Latin America, again, a full tour, US, Asia.
Yes.
Who knows? What kind of plans do you have for Hirax and Faster Than That?
Well, most of that's definitely in the works, and we're planning to do that. Obviously, we'll go back to South America. That's very important to us. That's one of our strong. We call it one of the strongholds.
Mhm.
When we tour, South America is always great. We'll go back to Europe, and that includes all of Europe, and then we'll be doing Japan and Southeast Asia, which is like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, so there's a lot of touring coming up, and then that's not even including North America. The United States, certain territories like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Texas, New York, we'll be doing all that stuff. So you'll be hearing more about us. The tour dates are going to start getting released, and the new record's still just getting out. Like what's really exciting is that the new album's just coming out, like right now as we speak. I mean, I just had one of the record companies send me pictures of the pallets of records, at the warehouse getting ready to ship. So it's a very exciting time in the history of Hyrax, and Faster Than Death's going to be getting out to everybody. And we look forward to seeing all of our fans all over the world, but especially South America. Like it's a very special place to us. And I have to say, even our brothers and sisters down in Mexico. Mexico's another important area that we tour, and we can't wait to go back. So I should say to all the Latin speaking and all the Spanish speaking countries, we say hello, uh, obrigado, as they say in Brazil, muchas gracias to all of our amigos all over the world. Thank you, and we'll see you very soon. And listen up for Faster Than Death.
Thank you very much for this interview. Thank you very much for this interview, Katon. And well, we already closed this interview. Thank you for have your time with me. It was a tremendous pleasure. Perhaps do you want to add something more to your Latin American fans and obviously Metallium followers?
Yeah, just much love and support. Like we really do appreciate it. It's part of the reason we're still around 40 years later is that the support that we've gotten from our fans from all over the world. But it's the Latin speaking world. or sometimes people like to say it differently. The Spanish speaking world means it's like the world to us, and we've been able to tour those countries and get so much love. Like even when we just show up at the airport or we're coming into the venues, seeing all the fans, their faces close up and shaking their hands and hugs, and even sometimes tears because they can't believe we're there. When somebody cries in front of you, that's the ultimate respect and love. So we can't wait to see the fans. And I thank you for the support. Thank you for all of what you do for heavy metal and thrash metal in general. So much respect to you, brother.